Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm continuing my reading and review of The Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And you can support the show in a couple of different ways. You can always join the Patreon page and get all the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. And you can also find all kinds of merchandise over at the merchandise store. And support is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. And please check out friends of the show. There are links that are in every episode description. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, has her own channel and is the co-host of this show every Saturday, whenever possible. And then Michael Strange of Trouble Minds Radio and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows, and my own as well, over there 24/7. As I always say with these book review shows here, where I'm reading, keep in mind a few things here. First of all, the words I'm reading and the thoughts and ideas behind them they belong to Charles Fort and may not align with our own thoughts and ideas here on this channel and you out there in the audience. So I think it's an important thing to consider. Also, there may be some things in this book and future books that I read by Charles Fort that were mysterious at the time to the public or to society in general, but have since been sort of figured out. So there may be some things like that you might hear as I'm reading these books. Also, I will make mistakes in my reading as I'm going along here with reading words and pronouncing them, words and names, and especially not just the ones in English, but in other languages. So I apologize for that. But this is not an audiobook, so there is no real editing to take care of those things. So, getting back to the material here. We were at the start of a long paragraph, and so I wanted to stop it there last time. I gotta scoop the chair over a little bit. There we go. Okay, so starting that paragraph again here. We read the first section of it. Another specimen for our museum is a comment in Nature upon these objects, that they are, in quotation marks, of an amusing character, thus clearly a celestial character, in quotation marks. Just why celestiality, or that of it which, too, is only of intermediateness, should not be quite as amusing as terrestriality is beyond our reasoning powers, which we have agreed are not ordinary. Of course, there is nothing amusing about wedges and spheres at all, or Archimedes and Euclid are humorists. It is that they were described derisively. There we go. If you like a little specimen of the standardization of orthodox opinion, American Meteorological Journal 4-589, in quotation marks, they are of an amusing character, thus clearly showing that they were of a terrestrial and not a celestial character, in quotation marks. I'm sure, not positively of course, that we've tried to be as easygoing and lenient with Mr. Simmons as his obviously scientific performance would permit. Of course, it may be that subconsciously we were prejudiced against him, instinctively classing him with St. Augustine, Darwin, St. Jerome, and Lyell. As to the thunderstones, I think that he investigated them mostly, in quotation marks, for the credit of the Englishmen, in quotation marks, or in the spirit of the Royal Krakatoa Committee, or about as the commission from the French Academy investigated meteorites. According to a writer in Knowledge 5-418, the Krakatoa Committee attempted not in the least to prove what had caused the atmospheric effects of 1883, but to prove that Krakatoa did it. Altogether, I should think that the following quotation should be enlightening to anyone who still thinks that these occurrences were investigated not to support an opinion formed in advance. In opening his paper, Mr. Simmons says that he undertook his investigation as to the existence of thunderstones, or thunderbolts, as he calls them, in quotation marks, feeling certain that there was a weak point somewhere, inasmuch as thunderbolts have no existence, in quotation marks. We have another instance of the reported fall of a cannonball, in quotation marks there. It occurred prior to Mr. Simmons' investigations, but is not mentioned by him. It was investigated, however, in the proceedings of the Royal Society of Society. I'm not sure about that one actually. 3-147 is a report of a thunderstone supposed to have fallen in Hampshire, September 1852. It was an iron cannonball, or it was a large nodule of iron pyrites, or bisulfurate of iron. No one had seen it fall. It had been noticed upon a garden path for the first time after a thunderstorm. It was only a supposed thing because it had not the character of any known meteorite. In the London Times, September 16th, 1852, appears a letter from Mr. George E. Bailey, a chemist of Andover, Hants, H-A-N-T-S. He says that in a very heavy thunderstorm of the first week of September, 1852, this iron object had fallen in the garden of Mr. Robert Dowling of Andover, that it had fallen upon a path within 6 yards of the house. It had been picked up immediately after the storm by Mrs. Dowling. It was about the size of a cricket ball. Weight 4 pounds. No one had seen it fall. In the Times, September 15th, 1852, there is an account of this thunderstorm, which was of unusual violence. There are some other data relative to the ball of quartz of Westmoreland. They're poor things. There's so little to them that they look like ghosts of the damned. However, ghosts, when multiplied, take on what is called substantiality. If the solidest thing conceivable in quasi-existence is only concentrated phantomosity, that's a cool word in a way, it is not only that there have been other reports of quartz that has fallen from the sky. There is another agreement. The round quartz object of Westmoreland if broken open and separated from its loose nucleus, would be a round, hollow quartz object. My pseudo position is that two reports of similar extraordinary occurrences, one from England and one from Canada, are interesting. I'll pause here and see why my computer didn't let me. And that's okay. All updates. And I can't do updates right now. Windows. Let's see here. I'll click on that and hopefully that'll work. Anyway, so getting back to the material here. Sorry about that. Gotta have those updates. Anyway, now I lost my spot. There we go. I found it. So this says the Proceedings of the Canadian Institute 3-7-8 that at the meeting of the Institute of December 1st, 1888, one of the members, Mr. I.A. Livingstone, exhibited a globular quartz body which he asserted had fallen from the sky. It had been split open. It was hollow. But the other members of the Institute decided that the object was spurious because it was not of true meteoritic material. No date, no place mentioned. We note that suggestion that it was only a geode which had been upon the ground in the first place. Its crystalline lining was geode-like. Quartz is upon the index prohibitory of science. A monk who would read Darwin would sin no more than would a scientist who would admit that, except by the up and down process, quartz has never fallen from the sky. But continuity, it is not communicated if part of or incorporated in a baptized meteorite. St. Catherine's of Mexico, I think. It's an Epicurean. It's as Epicurean a distinction as any ever made by theologians. Fassig, Fassig, lists a quartz pebble found in a hailstone. Bibliography, part 2-355. Up and down, of course. Another object of quartzite was reported to have fallen in the autumn of 1880 at Shroom Lake, New York, said in the Scientific American 43-272 to be a fraud. It was not the usual. About the 1st of May, 1899, the newspapers published a story of a snow-white meteorite that had fallen at Vincennes, Indiana. The editor of the Monthly Weather Review, issue of April 1899, requested the local observer at Vincennes to investigate. The editor says that the thing was only a fragment of a quartz boulder. He says that anyone with at least a public school education should know better than to write that quartz has ever fallen from the sky. Notes and queries. Words are hard. 2-8-92. That in the Leiden Museum of Antiquities, there is a disc of quartz, 6 centimeters by 5 millimeters by about 5 centimeters, said to have fallen upon a plantation in the Dutch West Indies after a meteoric explosion. And he says here just one word, bricks. I think this is a vice we're writing. I recommend it to those who have hankered for a new sin. At first, some of our data were of so frightful or ridiculous mean as to be hated or eyebrowed was only to be seen. Then some pity crept in. I think that we can now embrace bricks. The baked clay idea was all right in its place, but it rather lacks distinction, I think. With our minds upon the concrete boats that have been building terrestrially lately, and thinking of wrecks that may occur to some of them, and of a new material for the deep sea fishes to disregard. Object that fell at Richland, South Carolina. Yellow to gray, said to look like a piece of brick. American Journal of Science, 2-34-298. Pieces of furnace-made brick, said to have fallen in a hailstorm at Padua, August 1834. Edinburgh New Philosophical Journal, 19-87. The writer offered an explanation that started another convention, that the fragments of brick had been knocked from buildings by the hailstones. But there is here a concomitant that will be disagreeable to anyone who may have been inclined to smile at the now digestible enough notion that furnace-made bricks have fallen from the sky. It is that in some of the hailstones, 2% of them that were found with the pieces of brick was a light grayish powder. Monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, 337-365. Padre Secchi? No, sorry about that. Reading is hard. Secchi explains that a stone said to have fallen in a thunderstorm at Supino, Italy, September 1875, had been knocked from a roof. Nature, 33-153. That it had been reported that a good-sized stone of form clearly artificial had fallen at Naples, November 1885. The stone was described by two professors of Naples who had accepted it as inexplicable but veritable. They were visited by Dr. H. Johnston Lavis, the correspondent to Nature, whose investigations had convinced him that the object was a shoemaker's lapstone. Now, to us of the initiated, or to us of the wider outlook, there is nothing incredible in the thought of shoemakers in other worlds. But I suspect that this characterization is tactical. This object of worked stone, or this shoemaker's lapstone, was made of Vesuvian lava. Dr. Johnston Lavis thinks most probably of lava of the flow of 1631 from the La Scala quarries. We condemn most probably as bad positivism. As to the men of position who had accepted that this thing had fallen from the sky, I have now obliged them to admit their mistake, says Dr. Johnstone Lavis. Or it's always the stranger in Naples who knows La Scala lava better than the natives know it. Yeah. He mentions that over and over again. I think it's important. People in an area know what's around the area. Explanation. That the thing had been knocked from or thrown from a roof. As to attempt to trace the occurrence to any special roof, nothing said upon the subject. Or that Dr. Johnstone Lavis called a carved stone a lapstone, quite as Mr. Simmons called a spherical object a cannonball, bent upon a discrediting incongruity. Shoemaking and celestiality. It is so easy to say that axes or wedge-shaped stones found on the ground were there in the first place, and that it is only coincidence that lightning should strike near one. But the credibility of coincidences decreases as the square root of their volume, I think. Our massed instances speak too much of coincidences. But the axes or wedge-shaped objects that have been found in trees are more difficult for orthodoxy. For instance, Arago accepts that such finds have occurred, but he argues that if wedge-shaped stones have been found in tree trunks, so have toads been found in tree trunks. Did the toads fall there? Not at all bad for a hypnotic. Let's see here. Of course, in our acceptance, the Irish are the chosen people, and this is Sport speaking here, not me. It's because they are, I'm speaking, but it's because they are characteristically best in accord with the underlying essence of quasi-existence. M. Arago answers a question by asking another question. That's the only way a question can be answered in our Hibernian kind of an existence. And that's where we'll stop for now. So, talks about just falling bricks, falling pieces of quartz. The quartz thing is fascinating to me because of the energy implications when it comes to the ways it is said to have effects on things around it with energy and all those things. So I really think that's a neat detail there. I hadn't heard about that. And so, yeah, I think it's amazing that so many different things, but similar things also in the fact that there's stone and metal have fallen as well. And there's just so many reports of that. So anyway, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you all for listening. And I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.